All right, folks, a lot's going on in world politics, and definitely I will bring Rick in. He'll be talking about that shortly as I plan to travel from point A to point B. But let me see what I see really quickly as I bring him in and all along those lines. But let's see what's happening in the world of politics. I know he said that there was a leak that took place and everything like that. So, White House talking points claim victory in initial Iran deal, but often doesn't meet the reality. Trump signals he could send details of Iran deal to Congress, but definitely I think that Rick was already finding some information about that. Trump administration shift to special education. Trump has further gutted the education department by shifting oversight of special education and civil rights. So Trump is moving the oversight of special education and civil rights out of the education department, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that. Trump signals a swift return of sanctions on Russian oil as G7 refocuses on Ukraine and all along those lines. So definitely that's something that people are talking about as well. An investigation underway into the cause of a B-52 bomb crasher that killed eight. Trump administration is blaming Obama after reflecting pool turns green after a $14 million refurbishment. I also understand that the cost is going to be very high for that lovely ballroom and everything like that, and a lot of that's going to be on the taxpayers and
No.
everything in that space. So a lot of people are talking about that and having a lot of thoughts around that as well. So deal with the U.S. requires Israeli forces to leave Lebanon, is what Iran is saying. Iran's top envoy says peace deal with U.S. dependent on Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon. So U.S., Iran, and Hezbollah spark over the murky terms of the ceasefire deal and all along those lines. But Rick, I know you got a lot of things on your mind. You're saying that there had been a leak that had taken place and all along those lines. So tell me what you're finding out in the world of politics, and we'll see if anybody else joins us.
So,
And like I said, I might be
um,
down. One of my
um,
coworkers will give me from point A to point
so
B
there's
and
a
everything like that.
there's a
But definitely share what you got going on. And if I disappear,
right.
just know I'll be back shortly.
All right. There's a Saudi news network called Al Arabiya, and they have published a what is a leaked copy of the 14-point agreement that the U.S. and Iran are expected to sign on Sunday. And as people have suspected, it doesn't give the U.S. much. Um, any kind of nuclear supervision is to be worked out later. Let's see. There's no regime change. The strait is supposed to get reopened to full capacity within a month. Um, uh, the U.S. undertakes, this is provision 6, together with its regional partners, to create a comprehensive plan to ensure financing of at least 300 billion to for rehabilitation and economic development of Iran. So we're arranging to team up to give Iran $300 billion.
Oh, well, we'll keep the conversation going. Look at Drudge and everything like that. I know that Nick will probably be here, and I'm getting ready to get out of the hate time and everything like that. But should be on in another few minutes, even if I got to do it from the phone and everything like that. But just see what you find out on Drudge, and we'll be maintaining this conversation. But I do know that I sent it to everybody, but a couple of them, like Nick and Kim, have uh, what do you call it, administrative control. But definitely, if you can, just try to keep it going on Drudge for at least 15, 20 minutes. But and just let
Okay.
folks know what you got going on. But I will be there shortly.
All right. See you in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, all right. Here are the headlines on Drudge. And sorry, like my tongue and mouth are all. I guess stress gives you canker sores or something. My mouth is all torn up. I don't know why I'm more stressed than you. Anyway. So if my voice is a little mushy, that's what's going on. Here are the Drudge headlines. Mullahs more powerful than ever. Iran declares total victory. Will control Hormuz. Wall Street Journal says America in retreat. Inflation forced Trump into deal. So as I said, the deal has been leaked. The terms for the U.S. are not very good. It puts us in a worse position and Iran in a better position than they were before we started the war in February. Now, it doesn't get them their blown up buildings or their 1,500 dead people back, but it in a lot of strategic ways. Plus a third of $1 trillion, is favorable to Iran. Will this cost Trump anything politically? Obviously, he will announce it as a victory, and a third of Americans will believe it's a great victory. So I don't know. I mean, earlier today when we were talking in World Edition, will this? We were talking about what the Democrats should do if they end up back in control of the House of Representatives. How can they convince Americans that they're the better party to vote for in 2028 for president? And so Trump can tell Americans whatever bullshit he wants, and a third of Americans will believe him. And the terms of this terrible deal may have some seeds of strategy for Democrats, which is we should just bullshit Americans as much as Republicans do. We're constantly, liberals and Democrats are constantly being accused of being socialists and, wanting, trans people in every bathroom. And we should just make up stuff, which is we should give voters a ton of stuff. We should give them business development grants and inflation resistance subsidies. That is, we're up to 4.2% inflation again after about 3-4 years without that. And we should promise that if we end up in charge again, that every American household will get a $2,000 check to help with additional costs due to inflation. And doing that would be wildly inflationary, but we'll just say, no, it won't. It'll be fine. We should give, every American household thousands of dollars to retrain in the world of high tech and AI, because AI is eating up jobs like crazy. Again, this would be wildly inflationary and a little socialistic, and we should just say, no, it isn't. It's capitalism, and it won't cause inflation. And we should just bullshit Americans as much as Trump is bullshitting us. All right, let's look at more news. I mentioned this morning. I spent a lot of time on X, formerly Twitter, because I built a huge following there, and I'm too lazy and old to move out other places. And Twitter used to kick you off if you called people the F word that rhymes with maggot, or the N word that rhymes with bigger. And if I ran into somebody doing a bunch of tweets where they used the N word and the F word, I would report them. And generally, Twitter would get back to me and say, they've been suspended or had to remove the tweets. Lately, I've been doing that. And now that Musk is the world's first trillionaire, he has really cut back. I think under Musk, he's becoming increasingly a white supremacist. This is a guy who doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need to fight for white supremacy, but he likes to. His dad is a white supremacist, and I guess it's his hobby to argue that non-whites are invading and taking things away from white people, and that white people need to make more babies. And Musk himself has made 14 babies. And now he's letting people say the N-word just dozens and dozens of times. Just go online, and there's a thing called a reply guy, a guy who just looks at everybody's tweets and then replies to all of them. And some of these reply guys just call everybody an N-word or an F-word. And Musk was fined $140 million for not doing anything about it in Europe, where it's illegal. In the US, we've got First Amendment, which gives you the broad rights to say whatever you want. Now, Twitter X is a private company, and Musk has the right to shut anybody down for spreading hate, but he likes the hate. And so anyway, in Europe, he got fined $140 million. But as a trillionaire, which is a million millions, that's the equivalent of a regular millionaire being fined $140. So Musk doesn't give a crap. So, hey, out there, if you like calling people horrible things, here you go. Welcome to X. And here's another story related to Musk. Musk has, among his holdings, is an AI company called Grok. And this story from The Independent, a British newspaper, said that the Pentagon, the Department of War, used Grok AI to fire 2,000 missiles at Iran. That is, Grok decided, I guess, when and where to fire these missiles at. Fired 2,000 munitions at 2,000 distinct targets in 96 hours. If you saw Terminator, a movie from, I don't know what, 1984, more than 40 years old, people were worried about letting AI be in charge of our military. But apparently we're not that worried anymore. So the White House is apparently a little worried about how bad this Iran deal is, because here's an article from the Bulwark, linked to on Drudge, that says that J.D. Vance is being set up as the Iran deal fall guy. And so I can't spend too much, I can't give you too many details, because that would mean I would sit here and make you wait while I'm not saying anything while I read the article. But apparently he was, I know that J.D. Vance was on The View today, which is the 5 ladies on ABC in the morning who talk about, issues of the day, and his performance did not go that well. He claimed that Trump never said, "I love the inflation." And then they corrected him, because Trump definitely said it. So I don't know. So I think Vance says he's not running for president in 2028. He can change his mind, but he's being set up to look like crap and somehow be responsible for this terrible peace treaty. Okay. All right. The New York Times has an article looking into Epstein's death. So Jeffrey Epstein, huge pedophile, ran a syndicate, a crime syndicate that was responsible for molesting and sexually assaulting 2,000 young women and underage girls. Did I say 2,000? 1,000 girls, according to the FBI. And then he was finally arrested and imprisoned after 25 years of this, maybe 30 years of this. And in prison, he apparently committed suicide by hanging himself with a bed sheet, even though he was supposed to be under surveillance on camera. The 2 guards who were supposed to be surveilling him kind of forgot to. They weren't looking. So his death was suspicious. The New York Times has now done, even though it's years later now, has done a comprehensive investigation into every plausible theory of his death. And it came up with 6 main points. Point number 1, lots of new evidence suggests that Epstein was determined to end his life. So one theory is that it looks like exactly what it looks like, that the guards were shitty, they weren't paying attention. Epstein was bummed out because it looks like he was finally going to pay the price, and he hanged himself. He'd apparently written suicide notes, apparently had tried it before, months before. So that was point 1, that maybe he really did it, killed himself. Point 2 is Epstein might have tried to kill himself more times than was previously known. 2.5 weeks before his death, he tried it, and his cellmate saved him. And the New York Times says it might not have been his only previous attempt. Epstein's cellmate says he caught him preparing to kill himself 2 other times. Point 3 from the New York Times. Epstein often talked about suicide in the weeks before his death. He talked about suicide in conversations with lawyers, other inmates, and in his own writing. Epstein left behind other despairing notes, writing, "Only pain to me and others in the future. Why should people I love suffer for my problem?" So if he's dead, he can't testify against other people. This is point number 4. Warnings about Epstein's risk of suicide and the need to protect him were routinely ignored. Point 5, the handling of the death scene and evidence in Epstein's cell helped lead to lasting suspicions around his death. So the guards were inept, incompetent, and they muffed the investigation. They muffed the evidence. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and worked in a bunch of bars there. And I was friends with a ton of cops. And the cops were the greatest guys in the world, really nice cops. But when it came to solve crime, when JonBenet Ramsey got murdered, Boulder, fairly little town back then, still not the biggest town, but back when I was growing up was 20,000. By the time I was in college, it was maybe 50, 60, 70,000, still pretty small, still, low crime, except for coke and pot, not many people getting murdered. So when they had this, tough to solve murder to try to solve, they were inexperienced and they screwed up the investigation. So probably ditto with these investigators looking into Epstein's death. And point number 6, there are limits to what the autopsy of Epstein's body can tell us. So the New York Times comes down on the side of maybe he really did kill himself and everybody around him, except his cellmate, was incompetent. There's a saying that I like that is never attribute to malice what can be accounted for by incompetence. So maybe just everybody was a shithead. All right, let's find some other stuff. So gas just started week number 12 of costing more than $4 a gallon, national average. With the announced peace treaty, I'm guessing that it'll drop under $4 a gallon within the next week or so. It'll still be higher than it was. A year ago, it was, in the national average was under $3 a gallon. So it'll still be kind of high, but it'll be under $4, which psychologically is probably a big point in favor of Trump. But the inflation caused by all this, I've read, takes 3 to 6 months to work its way through the economy. So we're already seeing inflation at 4.2%. So we've probably got another 3, 4, 5 months of pretty heavy inflation. And will prices ever drop back down? Only gradually, if at all. Will this hurt Trump in the midterms? I don't know, because Trump has done a lot of the stuff that Biden got in trouble for, and worse, without inspiring. Now he does have the lowest approval ratings of any president since Harry Truman in 1946, but they're not that low. You know, he's at 38.8% on Nate Silver's aggregate. You know, so nearly 40% of Americans surveyed still approve of him. So, you know, will inflation, pretty heavy inflation, 4 or 5%, all the way to the midterms, cause him more damage in the midterms? I don't know. People are more tolerant of being bullshitted by Trump than they were tolerant of Biden. And maybe that's because Trump at least gets in front of the people and bullshits them. Biden hid in the White House. Biden has a stutter, was 81 years old, didn't speak very smoothly. And so the White House decided their strategy was to not have him speak very much at all, which was a dumbass strategy. They should have gotten Biden out there a lot and had Biden say, look, I'm old. My speaking isn't smooth. Every time I make a verbal misstep. Every time I stumble over my words, Fox is going to add that to a supercut of me stumbling and play it over and over again. And, you know, that's just, he should have said that that's just what they're going to do. But I'm going to keep coming in front of you, telling you what's what, even if I stumble sometime. And he could have gotten America, I think, used to an old guy who doesn't speak smoothly, but I think still thought competently in charge. But they didn't do that. They hid. You know, I have a whole theory about the debate, the night of the debate, when he was loopy and a little bit incoherent in the debate and sounded weak. And I think they gave him cough syrup, which you don't do for an 81-year-old guy who is coming off a long international tour. He was away from the White House for a week and more. He was coming off a cold, and there's a thing called senior delirium, where, you know, if I took cough syrup, if somebody 30 years old took cough syrup, you might get a little high, but you'd still be coherent. You could probably still operate a motor vehicle. Somebody 81 years old, what can be driven into delirium. It looks a little like Alzheimer's. And if you don't have a doctor on your medical staff who knows this about seniors, about old people, it happened to my mom after surgery. It happened to my mother-in-law. It happened to her brother. A bladder infection, a UTI, can make you loopy. Anything can make an old person loopy. And that's not ideal for a president, but it's fixable. Anyway.
Yes, it's very fixable. I'm back. I've made it from point A.
So I just
like that. But speaking of the president being loopy and all along those lines, I was just wondering your thoughts, because I know you and Kim were talking about it, about this whole, because I had mentioned earlier before you got here that apparently this expensive ballroom is going to be at the taxpayers' dollars, and the price keeps going up. It seems like it's astronomically high now and everything like that. And of course, we're also worried about the president's health. But what is your thoughts around this ballroom?
All right, let's do the ballroom. What's the current? Now, no, we haven't. So
I saw an article like 600 million or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, so I think the current number is 600 million. 600 million, current
And
number.
how much of that is supposed to be taxpayers? Because I think half of that is supposed to be by the
Well,
taxpayers.
initially, Trump said he and private donations would pay for the whole thing. Now they're saying only 293 million from private donations. 307 million will be paid for by taxpayers via the Secret Service, White House Military Office, and executive residence. And remember, there's no financing that it hasn't been funded, but Trump went ahead and knocked down the East Wing and has been building it anyway, even though he doesn't have financing. So yeah, he's just doing whatever the hell he wants, and yeah, we're going to pay for it. Will this piss off Americans? Will it cost him anything? Only 16% of Americans approved the circus on the White House front lawn over the weekend. The motorcycle jumping, the UFC fights.
Now, you mentioned to Kim about this motorcycle jumping. Now, the last time I saw motorcycle jumping, now I'm going to date myself and everything like that, was when Evel Knievel was living, and I used to love watching some of his stunts because he would do crazy things like jump over the Grand Canyon and jump over this or that, because he was definitely a Houdini type of stunts person. And
yeah, Houdini type, if Houdini broke every bone in his body.
Well, that's true, because he did break every bone in his body.
He busted a lot of bones. But back in the Evel Knievel times, that was a specialized skill and hobby. Only a few people practiced it. But now, 50 years later, there are thousands and thousands of people who do X Games type motocross and jumping, and they've turned it into an actual skill.
It's an Olympic sport. There's a place here in North Carolina, I think it's in Holly Springs, which is one of Raleigh's suburbs, and it's actually one of the Olympic X Games guys that has his own center. So he has got a center in Holly Springs, which is just outside of our state capital, and they will train you in how to do those.
Right, so it's training your body to understand the physics while you're in the air. Evel Knievel didn't have aerobatic skill. All he had was brass balls to throw himself, across the Snake River Canyon on a rocket-powered motorcycle. He didn't make it to the other side. He fell into the canyon, but he had a parachute. I don't think he was injured too badly in that one, but he'd build a jump and fly over, 20 school buses. But no, he wasn't doing tricks in the air. He was just trying not to die.
Exactly. And apparently it's a gold medal BMX rider, Daniel Dyers, D-H-E-R-S, and he's the one that's created the Daniel Dyers Action Sports Complex. So he's a Olympic gold medalist as a BMX rider. So he's built this impressive 37,000 square foot facility located at Park Drive in Holly Springs that has drawn BMX and skateboard enthusiasts from all over to train.
So what happens is that you have to learn how your body can twist in space. So what they do is they put you over a foam pit, right? And then they put you in a harness, and then you do your jumps and you twist in the air, and you see how the dynamics work under safe conditions until you can throw your body through the twists and flips on a bike. You train for it, I'm guessing, like you do, like a gymnast does. When a gymnast does, a 720 in the air, when a skateboarder does a 1440 or what's after 14, a 1620. You learn how to throw yourself through the air like a cat. If you throw a cat out of a fourth story apartment, the cat knows how to rotate in the air so it lands on all fours.
And apparently, the Trumps are getting into trouble with the UFC, because I'm just seeing this, because apparently Eric Trump allegedly questions whether UFC White House fights were rigged Daniel Cormier leaks DMs, then deletes the post. So Daniel Cormier briefly sparked a major UFC Freedom 250 controversy after screenshots allegedly showing DMs from Eric Trump about whether White House fights were rigged appeared on his account and were then deleted. So the claim exploded online during one of the most scrutinized UFC events in history, with the promotion staging fights on the White House South Lawn. So what followed was a messy cycle of screenshots, denials, and confusions over whether the messages were real. So Daniel Cormier deletes alleged Eric Trump UFC rigged fight post. So as Championship Rounds noted, Cormier now deleted.
So Eric Trump has either pulled back his accusations or he's claiming that he didn't make the accusations.
Correct.
He said that the leaked text messages were fake, fabricated, and AI generated hoaxes. So, in this case, I believe Eric Trump. What would he have to gain? I think somebody was just trying to make trouble.
They were trying to make trouble and get him in trouble and everything like that. Speaking of trouble, I saw another sports-related thing that was interesting, and it caused a little bit of controversy on Instagram. We know the Knicks won, and they won fairly. They came back amazingly in both games. That fifth game was it the fifth game? The fourth game was very amazing, and definitely the fifth game they also came.
Yeah, the fourth game was the biggest comeback.
Came back for 29 points, but apparently in the fifth game, as the San Antonio player was throwing the ball in and everything like that, you can see. I think it was Carl Anthony Thompson. He was using the fans as a fifth man, so he was literally getting the fans to crowd the San Antonio player who he was defending as well. So this has become somewhat of a controversy because apparently he was, they said that HCA home court advantage is very real. So he was trying to get the fans to actually crowd in to the person who was guarding who he was guarding. So it was like having to guard not just against the Knicks, but also against 4 or 5 fans as well. So this is a new controversy that's out there that just got released on Instagram.
Yeah, but it didn't help. I mean, they still lost.
Right. No, this was the Knicks player. So the Knicks player was the one that was doing this. He was getting.
Well, wait. So this game 5 was in San Antonio.
I think that this was from the game 4, but you could see that he was trying to get and it could have even been Knicks fans on the San Antonio court because he could have been.
I don't know. Okay. Well, well then, I mean, it's smart. He figured out a way that people haven't thought of before to gain a little advantage.
Right. Yes, he forgot a way to gain.
So, in any sport, like people will complain about the officiating.
Right.
And Wembanyama was the subject of a lot of controversy over the officiating, where
not just the controversy over the officiating, but he also, which a lot of times players are expected to shake hands and congratulate each other. So there's been a lot of controversy about the way he just walked off the field and didn't even acknowledge the Knicks or shake their hands in victory and everything like that. Now, given this is a young 22-year-old, so he still has some maturing to do as well. But there has been a lot of pushback because people are going like, you should have at least acknowledged that they beat you and come out there and shaking their hands because it's almost like a ritual.
We need Jatovi for this because Jatovi knows more than we do.
Right.
Last week, before the series ended, after Wembanyama had been involved in some pretty violent action on the court, and I asked, is Wembanyama an asshole? And Jatovi says no. So it could be, I think Jatovi would probably defend him saying, yeah, he's a 22-year-old, very disappointed guy.
Yeah.
He people probably expect him to be, better than he is in terms of maybe some little lapses in behavior because he's 7'4", so he towers over everybody. So
one of the things that Shaq is saying is that he needs to put on some weight and everything like that because he is 7'4", but apparently Shaq, who had the nickname Diesel and everything like that, is that one of the things he needs to do during the summer is put on, and I think he put on some weight between this year and last year, but he said he needs to put on some serious other weight because some of those players were muscling him around and maneuvering him around.
So I looked it up. I asked AI, would Wembanyama do better with more weight? Wembanyama at 7'4" goes about 240. which if you shrunk it down to my height, 5'11" or so, is proportionately like 120, which is a skinny guy. And obviously he's skinny. But I asked AI, and AI says, yeah, he could put on some weight, but he doesn't want, you don't want him to put on 30 pounds and start, because then that might throw off his rhythm.
Right.
It might, the extra weight might put extra pressure on his legs. So they said maybe 10 more pounds, mostly in his legs, to help him, stop and start and protect him, but as far as arm stuff and shoulder stuff, LeBron goes probably what, 2'4"? Let's see, LeBron.
And by the way, it was Game 4 where Karl Anthony Towns was telling the Knicks fans to get closer to Dylan Harper. So it was that amazing game where they came back from 29 points that they would have been a home court game for them. So he was trying to usher them closer and everything. Oh, this just in. The Knicks have declined their invitation to the White House. Why am I not surprised at this? But yes, because the Knicks have won, but they have declined their invitation to the White House. And we know there's a lot of brothers there and everything like that. So they are not trying to go there. We're thinking that because there are a lot of Russians and other people that the hockey team may decide, because I think that a couple of the Canes that were playing for Team USA did go when they got invited after they won the Olympic gold medal and everything. So with a couple of the Canes may go, I don't know if the entire team is going, but it looks like the entire Knicks team has turned down the invitation from Trump to go meet them at the White House and everything like that. So that just
I'm in favor of forgiving athletes whatever they want to do in terms of going or not going.
No, I'm with you on that. I had a question for you because I was doing some research yesterday, and this comes back to you as being a Mensa person and a very smart man and everything like that. I think that I've heard you say that you're either, according to some test, either the 4th or the 5th or the 6th most smartest person. I don't know where you rank, but you're in the top 10 or 20.
I say number 2 falling to number 3.
Okay, but one of the things
there are a lot of people who make similar, not a lot of, there are half a dozen people who make similar claims.
But there's a gentleman that made a similar claim, and I think he made it last year. I think he's Asian American and everything like that. But
I don't think he's even Asian. I think he's Korean. I think the guy is.
But he also is claiming that he's a big fan of Trump, and I just found this out. So I just wondered, as a not big fan of Trump, what you think about your fellow Mensa person being such a big fan of Trump? Because I know he made that.
So if I don't like talking about other people in this world because I don't want to start fights.
Right.
But this guy, the guy you're talking about, is well known to be a complete fake. He bases his highest IQ in the world scores on tests that I think he maybe made up himself or that nobody else accepts as being legit. And he has impossible scores of 276, which are impossible to achieve. He would have to be not only the smartest person on Earth, but in the whole galaxy, right, to get a score like this based on the way tests are scored. People who've dealt with him think he's full of bananas. Full of beans, I guess. I don't think full of bananas.
Yeah, exactly. Young Hoon Kim.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but he's kind of a con artist, but he's not stupid, and he saw that like by embracing Jesus and embracing Trump, he could get a pretty big following. I bet you he's got hundreds of thousands of followers on X. Let's see.
Well, this isn't, I know you don't like to do the conversation, but as of May 2026, there is no authoritative ranking of the world's highest IQ. Guinness retired the highest IQ category in 1990 and validated tests like the WAIS ceiling out around 160. Among commonly cited figures are mathematician Terence Tao, who apparently had a 225 to 230, Marilyn Vos Savage, who apparently had a 228, and astrophysicist Christopher Harada, who had a 225, and they topped.
All right, so Terence Tao is a mathematician at UCLA. Mm-hmm. That guy, legitimately super duper frickin' smart.
Right.
And the smarter somebody is in real life, the less they want to do with IQ, which is like a fakey smartness. Like I can claim. I'll claim my IQ. Stephen Hawking said that people who brag about their IQ are losers, which is kind of true. Now, I do have some real world achievements. So, maybe I've got a little bit of credibility, but nothing like Terence Tao, who comes up with, he solves problems, he does math that nobody else is able to do.
And there's some chess giants, so Nick will be glad to do this. Apparently, Bob Fischer had an IQ of 187. He was a chess grandmaster and everything like that. They're also saying that Albert Einstein.
But look what happened to Bobby Fischer. He went crazy.
Judith Polgar, who was born in 1976, apparently has a 176, and he's a chess grandmaster. So there's a couple of chess.
She's one of the Polgar sisters, and Nick can tell you that there's this family, and they're growing up in extreme poverty in Hungary. And the dad has 3 daughters, and they're little kids. They're like 4 or 5 years old, but they seem to like chess. And the dad is like, this might be our ticket out of poverty. And he turned them into chess prodigies. He hired private coaches, and he had them playing chess like 8-10 hours a day for years and years. So by the time they were teenagers, they were world-beating chess players. And it was eventually, once the dad convinced the government of Hungary, I think, to let them play, to let them go to international tournaments, it was their ticket out of a miserable life.
That makes sense. There's a couple of impressive names. I see Leonardo da Vinci had a high IQ between 180 to 220. But they're saying
all this is wild guessing.
This one they said was disputed because they said Stanley Kubrick, and I used to like some of Kubrick's movies, but they said that he had supposedly an IQ of 200, but it is a disputed claim. But he was a filmmaker that was.
It's all disputed because it's all made up. No, there weren't IQ tests in Leonardo da Vinci's time.
No,
and he was obviously a smart guy. And also, this is like discussions like this at this point in history are kind of goofy because AI either is able to outperform some of the best IQ test takers in the world or soon will be.
Oh, no doubt about that. Did you hear the news about Bill Gates? I saw Bill Gates was on this list and everything, but apparently his wife, and I know that they're divorced now, so ex-wife, she said that when she met Epstein, all she could think was that this is a creepy guy, and she tried to warn her then husband about how creepy he was and everything like that. So apparently he was a creep master even back then and everything like that. But yeah, she said that, I guess in a recent interview, that she just knew he was creepy and she scared him and everything like that. So
yeah. But Bill Gates, like me, is probably on the spectrum, right? So if you're on the spectrum, you might lack social skills.
Right.
And you might be bad at reading people.
Right.
You might be subject to flattery. Like, I don't know, like, about your town, but my town, Boulder, Colorado, had Moonies running around, members of a cult.
Well, we had here at Frischner's in Chapel Hill, and I think there might have even been some by the airport and everything like that. Because I saw one of the TV anchors, I think it was yesterday, they were celebrating the Canes victory, said that this is, and I don't know where they got the label from, but apparently this is the second smartest town in the United States. I'm guessing number one. They say that we're the second smartest.
Okay, the Boulder had the same reputation. When I was a kid growing up, they said that Boulder, Colorado would be if we had nuclear war, Boulder, Colorado would be one of the first cities to be bombed because of so much science going on there. And it was a point of pride. It was ridiculous. But anyway, in Boulder, what might happen to you is I'm in a bookstore, and I would read books for free because I was cheap. And these 2 hot girls come up to me and they say, "Ooh, you must be smart. Ooh, what are you reading?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hold on here. In my head, I'm like, hot girls don't talk to me because I'm a little creepy. and what's going on here? And I figured, okay, this must be a cult thing, right? And they're like, hey, why don't you come with us to dinner at our house? And I'm like, all right, I know it's going to be some cult thing. And it was the Mooney's house. And I went, we had Swedish meatballs, and then they sang songs, and I got bored and I got out of there. But like, I knew what was going on, but I had the social skills at least to understand that I was being scammed. Now, Bill Gates, does he have the social skills that if Epstein, says, hey, and like be my friend and meet my other friends who happen to be like 16, 19-year-old girls who are cute. Is Bill Gates like, no, that sounds like a bad idea? Or is Bill Gates like, I don't know, I'll go hang out on your island? Do I think Bill Gates got with girls? I don't think so. I think he is a smart guy. I think but I don't know, he probably went to the island. Epstein probably hid him where he lives, which is Epstein, a very smart guy himself, probably talked to Bill Gates about smart guy stuff.
Yeah, smart guy stuff, and apparently he claims he was going to meet him to get funding for the Gates Foundation. And I mean, Epstein definitely had money and had access to people with money and everything like that. I don't know what the anchor was talking about, the TV anchor, but I am seeing that North Carolina, I think, is number 6 in terms of statewide, but Durham, where I live at, is ranked as high as number 2 in recent national studies of educated populations, just behind Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Raleigh, because our state capital frequently recognized as number 6 nationwide by Forbes for its highly educated and tech-heavy workforce. In the Triangle region, the broader region, is the number 2 fastest growing tech hub in the U.S. So he's probably getting one of those 2 stats and everything like that.
Yes, like where you live, Raleigh, Durham seems.
I live in Durham, but Raleigh, a lot of times it's considered the research anchor park. It's kind of like Minneapolis, St. Paul.
I bet you it's a pretty exciting, great place to live. You've got a lot of the stuff going on without the level of assholery that you find in Silicon Valley with the tech bros. I'm sure real estate isn't cheap, but it's got to be cheaper than Silicon Valley. My wife and I are watching The Audacity, which is a new show about tech billionaires being assholes. And it's one of those shows where everybody is horrible. But it's got a good hook. What it is, like it's about a tech bro and his relationship with his shrink, who uses what she's the shrink to all these billionaires. And she uses what she learns in these therapy sessions to do insider trading. And
I know this is a random question, but I was on the bus earlier going to Haytown because I had to meet intern that we've got, and we're trying to do some history archiving because we got tons of information, everything from our blues festival to an old church bell from when it used to be a church to parts of a pipe organ. And we found some old records, including some old R&B records like the Commodores and Eric and Rakim, which was early hip hop, and a number of other things, including a faceplate of somebody that used to work there, one of our early directors. But as I was catching the bus, there was a young gentleman, and he was trying to get his rap on with 2 young ladies. And he was talking, the young ladies were talking about how they had gone through 3 therapists and everything like that. And I know that way back when I had some therapy work back when I was working at Goodwill, and I probably could use even some therapy now and everything like that. But how many people do you think are actually in the therapy roles of our population, or should be? Because there probably some people like the president that it should be that aren't and everything like that. But I was just with young people, and this young lady, I overheard her say that she had been through like 3 separate therapists.
So I've been to 6, starting when I was 6 years old. And my wife and I have been in couples counseling, which is a kind of therapy for close to, 34 years, because I have good insurance through the Writers Guild. So once a month, we meet with a therapist. We talk over stuff. It's not because we're always, thinking that you only go to a couples counselor if you're in trouble isn't the deal. We have the luxury to be able to do some work, and we've taken advantage of it. I think everybody could use some therapy, especially since, Gen Z spends all its time looking at their phones. So maybe one of the things on this show I just mentioned, The audacity is one of the characters is developing an AI shrink. So I think everybody could use it, whether a real person or an AI shrink. It helps you get insight into your life and maybe consider things you can do to have a better handle on what you should do, how you should think about things. I think it's helpful for everybody, and you don't need to be having a serious mental crisis to benefit.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. How sick do you think President Trump is? Because I'm hearing a lot of people that are seeing signs on his hands, seeing signs on this part of his body, that part of his body. So a lot of people are thinking that he is in serious health crisis and everything like that. I don't claim to be a doctor. I don't even play one on TV and everything. I will occasionally appear on Dr. Pat Mr. show. But just in your own observation and what you're reading, how much, because I know you're an avid reader just like I am, how much of a crisis do you feel that Trump is in?
I don't think he's in great shape, but I don't think he's in the worst shape in the world, because they said that at his last checkup, 22 doctors were involved. So he's got a medical team that seems to be aware of his various issues. I think Biden had a medical team that overlooked some issues with him. Like I said earlier, I think somebody gave him cough syrup. I think Jill Biden herself said that he was given cough syrup the night of the debate. No gerontologist would have let that happen, or would have let the debate go on once he was given cough syrup. So I believe that Trump is getting the best medical care in the world. So his medical issues, now he's probably not the most compliant patient in the world. I wear a zillion socks on my legs because I have something kind of like him. It's hard for the blood because I have varicose veins and I have a botched surgery for the blood to get back from my feet up to the rest of my body. So I have a bunch of pressure socks. And if you're not used to them, they're not comfortable. And so you don't wear them. My dad had a similar issue and he wouldn't wear the socks. My mother-in-law wouldn't wear the socks. And if you don't, then your feet and ankles swell up and turn purple. If you ever see a homeless person who sleeps sitting up on park benches, bus stops, you see their legs and their ankles are huge. They're angry red. Sometimes the skin splits. Well, Trump won't wear the pressure socks. And so I think he's got issues. Every time he has a checkup now, they give him the dementia test. So he stays up all night a few nights a week, which is not great if you're 80 years old for your mental functioning in the daytime. But
it makes sense. How concerned are you about because I know you probably got in your own closet, and we'll get ready to wrap up because I got to do Mama Nona's show shortly and everything like that. But how concerned are you when you look in your closet with your old medicine? Because like I said, we used to do a blues festival, and hopefully we'll bring it back, but we did it for 30 years at the Habitat Center. And of course, I found the old, as I was doing some of the history archiving today, some of the old medicine. And of course, neither me or the young intern are going to try to take that medicine because some of it is probably
I'm not
40
concerned.
years old and everything like that. But the Band-Aids might still be usable. But how concerned are you when you look in your closet and you see some of your medicine? Because maybe you, like I, have some outdated medicine.
No, the deal is I've got the opposite concern, right? Because my wife throws everything away. My wife goes in the medicine cabinet and if she sees an antibiotic that's expired, she'll toss it. And then I'll start feeling a little bad. And I'm like, I can just drop an antibiotic. I got those old antibiotics and I can just drop one of those on this. And I go to the medicine cabinet and it's gone. I'm like, what happened? She goes, it was expired. No, let me keep that stuff. I might still want it. So like a couple of weeks ago, I got in this huge fight with Lance on Naked at Night. Right. And I broke out in a rash that I think was probably a light case of shingles. I'm vaxxed against shingles, but you can still get a breakthrough. And I got some pills to knock it down, but I didn't take all of them. And now those pills are in my medicine cabinet. And if something like that happens, all right, I think we're done almost.
I hit the wrong button, but if something that like that happens again, you'd be concerned and everything like that.
No, I still have most of the pills and I don't have to go to the doctor and I can see, I can be my own doctor. for good or for bad, I've got the pills around. So I like having old pills. I've got the producer on a show I worked on 20 years ago gave me a Viagra to try. I still have that. I've never.
Did I tell you the story about Viagra?
I don't think I would want to use a 20-year-old Viagra.
No, you don't want to use it too. But did I ever tell you the story about Viagra? That I think I mentioned on this show. I know I mentioned on the online dinner party. But I have a dear friend of mine. She's gone through some health issues, but she was doing one of those kind of what do you call them? Amway kind of programs to get you into different kind of multi-level
marketing, like a
right. And one of the things that she was trying to sell was the female version of Amway. So it was, female version of Viagra. So I went to the presentation. It was at one of our HBCUs, historically Black College University, in their student union, their then student union, because this was decades ago and everything like that. And I tell you, Rick, it was hilarious because in the middle of the presentation, this woman did like a Harry Meet Sally fake orgasm and everything like that, because that's what they were claiming would happen if you got this female Viagra and everything.
The female Viagra is Viagra. Right. If you give a woman like a half of Viagra, stuff down there will get a little swollen. And I don't know that it works as well for women as for guys, but it does work, I believe. I can look it up and then we should go.
All right.
Studies on effectiveness for women are mixed. While it may physically increase blood flow, lubrication and sensation does not boost sexual desire or libido, which makes sense because guys can get horny for anything. Women, I was a stripper for off and on for quite a while. My tips were terrible, tips in general for guys, because women don't particularly like male strippers because it's just some asshole like naked in front of them. And they have some ass, they're probably married to some asshole.
They're probably married to some asshole. And then there's that whole debate as to whether women care about length or don't care about length. So that's the other.
But what women care about is like, what would make women hot is a guy getting on stage and dancing around in a business suit and giving them a resume saying, I earn $155,000 a year and I'm on the partner track at my law firm. And a woman would be like, oh, okay. So, women have to be have to be convinced that you're not a piece of crap. Guys don't care. You can be guys will be into an 18-year-old young woman stripper who are like, I don't care if she's a ding-a-ling and has caused a trail of chaos. I can afford to take care of her for a while until she does.
I know you're married, you're happily married, and I've got great respect because I've heard you talk about it for your wife and everything like that. But as the old man, literally the old man of the station and everything like that, and still in the single space, about to hit 64 in 2 weeks and a day.
Oh, happy birthday!
Because it'll be on July 1st. How far young would you go? Because I've had some 30-year-olds that have approached me and I've contemplated it and everything like that. But then sometimes they want to bring up the notion of having babies. And I'm going like, do I really want to be an 80-year-old running around with a teenager and everything like that? But I have contemplated dating definitely younger. I don't know, 30 might be a little bit too young and definitely 40s might even be pushing it. But if you were in the single space, how far down would you go? Because I've also heard that
I wouldn't go very far back.
8+7.
So I'm in Hollywood.
Right.
And A, I don't want to give up my wife.
Right.
And B, if I found myself due to tragic circumstances single again, there's a phenomenon in Hollywood where, you don't know whether, the young hot person who wants to be with you, you got to question their motives.
Right.
A number of people, big movie stars, Charles Bronson and I could, if I did some research, I could find you another half a dozen. A young woman hooks up with a guy in his 70s or 80s, grabs all the money in the will, the heirs, the kids, they all get nothing. And that sucks for everybody. I wouldn't want to do that. And also, I don't know that I would want to. And really, we live in a world where you don't have to do that, where we've all got, access to all the porno in the world. So you don't need to be with a 19-year-old, possibly shady young woman to get off. You just need to frickin' go on the internet.
Oh, there's plenty on the internet, and there's plenty that you can do on the internet. There's plenty, just way too much porn is out there. Because like I said, you can go to various sites, even though some of the big sites were banned here in North Carolina and are still banned. But there are other sites that you can get around if that's your thing and everything like that. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities, and there's AI, there's old-fashioned porn, there's dolls, there's all kinds of things that we still got. And Adam and Eve, not that far from my house and everything like that. I've never been in that store.
Oh,
but
Casey Kasem was another case like that, where the second, third wife ends up in a legal battle that goes on for years and years, battling the heirs of the first wife and the second wife, and it eats up all the money in the estate. So I wouldn't want to create that issue for.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to create that issue either. But I mean, we can talk about this on another show and everything. But it is interesting because I'm going to have some sex education people come on some of our shows, maybe my online dinner party, maybe even the news show and everything like that. But you got a lot of people that are out there buying those toys. Adam and Eve was started here, I think, in North Carolina, and it's still a very popular chain. You can get everything from toys to other things to help you out. This is Pride Month, so I'm sure they're probably even sponsoring some events and everything like that. So
Yeah,
all kinds of toys.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of role play.
Mhm.
I'm pretty lazy when it comes to all of that, and that's just too much work.
I agree. Too much work. But on that note, we're going to get ready to get
All right.
out of here, and we'll have World Edition tomorrow, and we've got other shows, including my online dinner party. Got to figure out who my guests are going to be.
All right.
But we're going to get on out of here on this show.
All right.
And
So
we'll have
thank
some
you,
other
and I'll see you
conversations, and I
tomorrow morning.
appreciate you maintaining while I was getting from point A to point B.
Sure. All right. Bye.
Bye.